Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and the First Lady.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of the colors, and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by the Alice Steele Junior High School Choir of Washington, D.C., followed by the Invocation. Bishop Christopher Stendhal will deliver the invocation.
O God, both hidden and revealed, be present with thy creative power of life. Be present in this place, this memorial of the obscenest of deaths and devastation. Be present as thy spirit, thy ruach, thy driving wind, thy breath of life, hovered over the chaos and the void on the first day of the world. By thy presence may this memorial work in each of us who come here that most specific resolve for what must be his next step, her next act. By thy most holy and creative presence, let the work we dedicate today not have been in vain. In thy presence let there be much silence for each and every one, who comes here, silence to hear and to respond honestly, decisively. I, for one, as a Christian, pray that we in the churches be rudely and finally awakened to our age-old complicity in the ultimate crime of the Holocaust. Be present, O God, to us all, and bring us together in one resolve against all hatred. And let the words of thy prophet, his cry, his lament, be heard for generations on this mall of this nation. The words, "Is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by? Behold and see, there is a sorrow like unto mine sorrow, which is done to me." So we say, never again, ever. Leolam lo od. Amen.
Please be seated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Ted Topple.
Mr. President, His Excellency, the President of the State of Israel, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am the son of refugees from the Holocaust, but I can never know what some of you here have experienced. There is a line between us that can never be crossed. I cannot remember events I never experienced, and you who experienced them can never forget. But here at last is a place where we can meet, still separated by the line of experience, but a place where we can touch, where even the dead can reach out to the living and touch. This is a place where timeless questions are raised. Where was God, and why did he permit the innocent to be trampled? Even the prophet Daniel, celebrated as the wisest man of his time, whose confidence in the Almighty commends him throughout the ages as a paragon of faith, even Daniel could be troubled in his own time by God's failure to intervene. Where, asked Daniel, are God's mighty acts, seeing that the heathens enslave his children? Where was God? The God of infinite mercy and compassion, who was willing to spare the entire city of Sodom for the sake of even 10 virtuous men. Are we to believe that not even 10 virtuous men or women perished among the 6 million? Surely not. Then why? And again, why? Unless we are obliged finally to draw the distinction between God's capacity and God's will. And since, if we believe, we cannot question the Almighty's capacity, what can we at least begin to conclude about God's will? The message, God knows, has been conveyed to us often enough through saintly men and women of all faiths. We must accept responsibility for one another. The line is attributed to Edmund Burke: "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." So that when we speak the words "never again," they must be more than just a defiant warning to our enemies. Those words are also a pledge to all innocent victims of hatred and racism and bigotry, Jews or Christians, Muslims or Hindu, or those without faith, be they here in Washington or in Jerusalem, in Cambodia or Bosnia. This place and what we commemorate here today demands that we pledge never to close our hearts to the oppressed. Never again. Never. Then surely God's will be done. This museum is the result of the work and devotion of many people, none more committed and passionate than the current chairman of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. It is my privilege to introduce to you Mr. Harvey M. Meyerhoff.
Mr. President, His Excellency, the President of the State of Israel, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished guests, survivors, ladies and gentlemen. Only guard yourself and guard your soul carefully, lest you forget the things your eyes saw, and lest these things depart your heart. And you shall make them known to your children and your children's children. These words from the book of Deuteronomy are engraved on the wall behind the flame, the eternal flame, in the Hall of Remembrance. Thousands of years old, they poignantly set out the mission of the unique institution we dedicate today, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. It is a mission of remembrance and education. Only guard yourself and guard your soul carefully, lest you forget the things you saw, and lest these things depart your heart. 200,000 Americans from all 50 states provided the funds to build this museum. Their generosity and the unstinting support of the federal government, which donated the land for the museum, now enables this institution to begin its eternal journey of remembrance. This building tells the story of events that human eyes should never have seen once, but having been seen, must never be forgotten. Our eyes will always see. Our hearts will always feel. But it is not sufficient to remember the past. We must learn from it. The story of the Holocaust is not simply a story about the evil people did to people. The unspeakable acts perpetrated by the Nazis upon 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, Poles, Gypsies, Soviet prisoners of war, homosexuals, the handicapped, and political and religious dissidents. It is also a story about hope, decency, and what people did for people. The saintliness of the rescuers who risked their lives and in some cases lost them to help strangers avoid the inhumanity of the Nazi regime. Importantly, it is also about the things people did not do at all. The indifference of the bystanders who watched as their neighbors and friends were first denied their rights, then brutalized, and ultimately annihilated. By compelling us to regard all those individuals, the victims, perpetrators, heroes, and bystanders, as individuals, this remarkable museum teaches us not merely about human events, but about human nature, and thereby fulfills its mission of education. And you shall make them known to your children and to your children's children. By its very existence at the heart of our great democracy, this museum will teach generations to come not only about the awful events of the past, but about the awful consequences of bigotry, oppression, hatred, and intolerance, and about the responsibilities that each of us has as citizens of our democratic society. And in so doing, this museum calls forth the words from the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and country, and summons us anew to the pursuit of liberty and justice for all. This is an American museum for the American people. It may prove to be more, but it must never be anything less. Many have worked so hard that this day might come. However, a handful of individuals were at the core of this effort. They share this dais today and deserve special thanks. Ben Mead, for his dedication to the soul of this museum. Miles Lehrman, for spearheading the enormous fundraising effort. Albert Abramson, for his grace, energy, time, and skill, without which this institution could not have been built. Sandy Brock, Sandra, for our Dedication Week activities. And to Bill Lowenberg, my vice chairman, confidant and friend, I can only say that it would have been impossible to have reached this day without you. James Ingo Freed, an incredibly gifted architect. Designed a building that allows us to comprehend the incomprehensible. Museum director Sheike Weinberg created a museum that tells an unforgettable story unforgettably.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Koppel. President and Mrs. Clinton, His Excellency, the President of Israel, and Mrs. Herzog, to the distinguished heads of state gathered here in the audience, Mr. Speaker, to the many members of the House and Senate who are gathered here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow human beings. This memorial museum will help us explore a question that is as urgent today as it has been for the last 50 years. How could the human race have allowed such a calamity as the Holocaust to fall upon us? What terrible darkness lies coiled in the human soul that might account for this barbarism? The sorrow rising from such questions is deeper than all tragedy and leaves us mute before a mystery the human mind cannot penetrate. We are reduced to a silence filled with the infinite pool of feeling that has created all the words for humility, heartbreak, helplessness, and hope in all the languages of the world. The story told in this memorial museum warns us of the unfathomable power of evil and the pestilence of the human soul that for a time can dissolve nations and devastate civilization. But it also tells us of the inspiring resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto and in hundreds of other locations not as well known. It tells us that a fierce, bright light blazes eternal in the human breast and that the darkness can never put it out. It tells us of the rescuers. It tells us of nations, two in particular, Denmark, where the story is well known, and Bulgaria, where the story is less well known. Nations where an entire people rose up and said, "This shall not happen in our midst." It tells us of the necessity of leadership dedicated to preventing intolerance, hatred, and oppression. President Bill Clinton has devoted his life and his public career to those principles. He learned them growing up in Arkansas. As a governor, Bill Clinton stood up to racism and bigotry and intolerance, working hard to bring the people of his state together in common purpose. As president, he continues as a tireless advocate for the rights of the defenseless, the rights of individuals, for human rights in a struggle waged every day around the world. His message is clear. The United States stands for freedom and opportunity, for equal rights and democracy. It is an honor for me to serve with him and an honor to introduce to you the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, and Mrs. Gore, President and Mrs. Herzog, the distinguished leaders of nations from around the world who have come here to be with us today, the leaders of our Congress and the citizens of America, and especially to Mr. Meyerhoff and all of those who work so hard to make this day possible, and even more to those who have spoken already on this program, whose lives and words bear eloquent witness to why we have come here today. It is my purpose on behalf of the United States to commemorate this magnificent museum, meeting as we do among memorials within the site of the memorial to Thomas Jefferson, the author of our freedom, near where Abraham Lincoln is seated, who gave his life so that our nation might extend its mandate of freedom to all who live within our borders. We gather near the place where the legendary and recently departed Marian Anderson sang songs of freedom, and where Martin Luther King summoned us all to dream and work together. Here on the town square of our national life, on this 50th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising, at Eisenhower Plaza on Raoul Wallenberg Place, we dedicate the United States Holocaust Museum and so bind one of the darkest lessons in history to the hopeful soul of America. As we have seen already today, this museum is not for the dead alone, nor even for the survivors who have been so beautifully represented. It is perhaps most of all for those of us who were not there at all, to learn the lessons, to deepen our memories and our humanity, and to transmit these lessons from generation to generation. The Holocaust, to be sure, transformed the entire 20th century, sweeping aside the Enlightenment hope that evil somehow could be permanently vanished from the face of the earth, demonstrating there is no war to end all war, that the struggle against the basest tendencies of our nature must continue forever and ever. The Holocaust began when the most civilized country of its day unleashed unprecedented acts of cruelty and hatred, abetted by perversions of science, philosophy, and law. A culture which produced Goethe, Schiller, and Beethoven, then brought forth Hitler and Himmler, the merciless hordes who themselves were educated as others who were educated stood by and did nothing. Millions died for who they were, how they worshiped, what they believed, and who they loved. But one people, the Jews, were immutably marked for total destruction. They who were among their nation's most patriotic citizens, whose extinction served no military purpose nor offered any political gain, they who threatened no one, were slaughtered by an efficient, unrelenting bureaucracy, dedicated solely to a radical evil with a curiously antiseptic title, The Final Solution. The Holocaust reminds us forever that knowledge divorced from values can only serve to deepen the human nightmare, that a head without a heart is not humanity. For those of us here today representing the nations of the West, we must live forever with this knowledge, even as our fragmentary awareness of crimes grew into indisputable facts. Far too little was done. Before the war even started, doors to liberty were shut, and even after the United States and the Allies attacked Germany, rail lines to the camps within miles of military significant targets were left undisturbed. Still, there were, as has been noted, many deeds of singular courage and resistance. The Danes and the Bulgarians, men like Emanuel Ringelblum, who died after preserving in metal milk cans the history of the Warsaw Ghetto. Janusz Korczak, who stayed with children until their last breaths at Treblinka. And Raoul Wallenberg, who perhaps rescued as many as 100,000 Hungarian Jews. And those known and those never to be known, who manned the thin line of righteousness, who risked and lost their lives to save others, accruing no advantage to themselves, but nobly serving the larger cause of humanity. As the war ended, these rescuers were joined by our military forces, who alongside the Allied armies played the decisive role in bringing the Holocaust to an end. Overcoming the shock of discovery, they walked survivors from those dark, dark places into the sweet sunlight of redemption. Soldiers and survivors being forever joined in history and humanity. This place is their place too. For them as for us, to memorialize the past and steel ourselves for the challenges of tomorrow. We must all now frankly admit that there will come a time in the not too distant future when the Holocaust will pass from living reality and shared experience to memory and to history. To preserve this shared history of anguish, to keep it vivid and real, so that evil can be combated and contained, we are here to consecrate this memorial and contemplate its meaning for us. For more than any other event, the Holocaust gave rise to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the charter of our common humanity. And it contributed, indeed made certain, the long overdue creation of the nation of Israel. Now, with the demise of communism and the rise of democracy out of the ashes of former communist states, with the end of the Cold War, we must not only rejoice in so much that is good in the world, but recognize that not all in this new world is good. We learn again and again that the world is yet to run its course of animosity and violence. Ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia is but the most brutal and blatant and ever-present manifestation of what we see also with the oppression of the Kurds in Iraq, the abusive treatment of the Baha'i in Iran, the endless race-based violence in South Africa, and in many other places. We are reminded again and again how fragile are the safeguards of civilization. So do the depraved and insensate bands now loose in the modern world. Look at the liars and the propagandists among us, the skinheads and the Liberty Lobby here at home, the Afrikaners resistance movement in South Africa, the Radical Party of Serbia, the Russian black shirts. With them, we must all compete for the interpretation and the preservation of history, of what we know and how we should behave. The evil represented in this museum is incontestable. But as we are its witness, so must we remain its adversary in the world in which we live. So we must stop the fabricators of history and the bullies as well. Left unchallenged, they would still prey upon the powerless, and we must not permit that to happen again. To build bulwarks against this kind of evil, we know there is but one path to take. It is the direction opposite that which produced the Holocaust. It is that which recognizes that among all our differences, we still cannot ever separate ourselves one from another. We must find in our diversity our common humanity. We must reaffirm that common humanity even in the darkest and deepest of our own disagreements. Sure, there is new hope in this world. The emergence of new, vibrant, democratic states, many of whose leaders are here today, offers a shield against the inhumanity we remember. And it is particularly appropriate that this museum is here in this magnificent city, an enduring tribute to democracy. It is a constant reminder of our duty to build and nurture the institutions of public tranquility and humanity. It occurs to me that some may be reluctant to come inside these doors because the photographs and remembrance of the past impart more pain than they can bear. I understand that. I walked through the museum on Monday night and spent more than 2 hours. But I think that our obligations to history and posterity alike should beckon us all inside these doors. It is a journey that I hope every American who comes to Washington will take, a journey I hope all the visitors to this city from abroad will make. I believe that this museum will touch the life of everyone who enters and leave everyone forever changed. A place of deep sadness and a sanctuary of bright hope. An ally of education against ignorance, of humility against arrogance, an investment in a secure future against whatever insanity lurks ahead. If this museum can mobilize morality, then those who have perished will thereby gain a measure of immortality. I know this is a difficult day for those we call survivors. Those of us born after the war cannot yet fully comprehend their sorrow or pain. But if our expressions are inadequate to this moment, at least may I share these words inscribed in the book of wisdom. The souls of the righteous are in the hands of God, and no torment shall touch them. In the eyes of fools they seem to die. Their passing away was thought to be an affliction, and their going forth from us utter destruction. But they are in peace. On this day of triumphant reunion and celebration, I hope those who have survived have found their peace. Our task, with God's blessing upon our souls and the memories of the fallen in our hearts and minds, is to the ceaseless struggle to preserve human rights and dignity. We are now strengthened and will be forever strengthened by remembrance. I pray that we shall prevail.
Please join us in a moment of silence dedicated to those who perished in the Holocaust. This eternal flame will burn forever in memory of the past and with hope for the future. Please remain standing for the benediction by Rabbi Alfred Gottschalk.
God of all peoples, Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo, Rock of Israel and its Redeemer, we stand before you as Moses did before the burning bush. You called him, and he answered, Hineni, here I am. God said to him, Shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. Moses, take off your shoes, for you are standing on holy ground. It is with this sense of the sacred that we stand before you. Our hearts are filled with awe, laden with pain, and also with gratitude. Our pain consumes our very being, for we remember our fathers and our mothers, our sisters and our brothers, our families and our friends, whose memory is sacred to us, cruelly torn from our bosoms in days and nights of starkest terror. Our gratitude flows from the knowledge that we and our children gathered here today are brands plucked from the burning, survivors of the Shoah, who are commanded to speak the unspeakable. This place sacred to memory, this museum in America stands as an eternal witness to the Holocaust. It also stands for resistance to evil and the enshrinement of that which is good in the human spirit. We thank God this day for those noble and courageous spirits who dared to remember and who banded together to build this museum. Those presidents of the United States, the Congresses of the United States, members of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council, its august leadership and staff, and the thousands, nay, tens of thousands of contributors who have generously supported this venture. All are remembered today, appreciated, and thanked. This museum must become a living memorial to the victims of the Holocaust so that all might come to learn its message and future generations be spared new grief and new pain. Yes, as Levick wrote, the heaviest wheel rolls across our foreheads to bury itself deep somewhere in our memories. Let then this memorial, built in our nation's capital, speak to all our citizens, to all the human family, as a warning of what can happen when evil is not aborted at its beginning and when wickedness is permitted to flourish without hindrance. Let us be ever vigilant not to forget the past. Let the past instruct us now and in the future to secure the dignity of the human family everywhere. And now, as we are standing in grateful appreciation to our Creator, let us recite the Shehechianu together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We thank you, O God, Creator of the universe, that you have enabled us to reach this time, this place. And let us together say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the renowned American soprano, Jessie Norman, will now sing America the Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a long ceremony. You are cold, you are uncomfortable, but you have also borne witness to what was. Let us now join hands and bear witness to what is. Thank you.
We ask that you please remain seated until the President and our various guests have departed. Please remain seated until the President and our various guests have departed. Thank you.